Hello, my name is Martin Tully, and I'm a solutions engineer here at Portnox. And today, what I'm going to do is walk you through some of the features that we have inside Portnox Cloud. So, as you can see on my screen currently, what we're looking at here is our alerts page. So, the alerts page in Portnox Network Access Control is basically anything that is happening on your network, any type of activity. So, devices trying to authenticate against an SSID or a device that got plugged into a port that's been enabled for 802.1x, we would see all of those alerts here. As you can see here, currently what we're seeing is a lot of synchronizations that are happening with my integrations that I've done with Jamf and Intune and Azure Active Directory. But you can also see here some devices that have authenticated. So you can see here's a Windows device that authenticated. And you can see here that this user here is what was presented to us. The user has a certificate on his device, and you can see the certificate that was issued to and the username, right? So it's basically just a UPN format. That certificate was presented to us, so us being Portnox, and was authenticated against Azure Active Directory. So with that integration that I have with Azure AD, I'm able to look up this user, make sure that the user is still active and enabled in Azure AD so they can authenticate successfully. We also show you that it connected, what SSID it connected to, the MAC address of the device, the group that user got put into. In this particular case, he got put into a group called Intune Users. And he has a policy called System Default Policy. This policy is an access control policy that basically states if I wanted to put this specific user or this group into a specific VLAN. So that's what we can do there, and that's what we're seeing here on the screen. So a lot of nice information. You'll see here there's another a link here called Session Details. And if I click on this Session Details, what it does is it actually takes me to information about that session, right? So this will allow me to troubleshoot a little bit easier because I can take a look at, again, the MAC address, the device name, the radius instance it connected to, the radius attributes that were exchanged between our network access control or our radius services and also with the switch or the AP. The SSID it connected to, the IP address of that specific access point, the certificate that got presented. So all that information, this will allow you to do some troubleshooting. This is a feature that we recently added in to Portnox Clear. You can also see here, because this device has an agent installed on it, the agents let me know that Microsoft OneDrive has changed versions. So you can basically see what versions applications have. You can create risk policies for different types of attributes on that device. You can also see here I have the ability to filter these alerts very easily. So I can see if there's some sort of action required, what kind of alert type that I'm seeing, right? And I can create this filter here. I want to see private access authentication, 802 authentication success, MAC bypass denied. And if I create that filter, that's what I'm going to see. So I can see, again, that specific authentication success. I can see another authentication success for a different user. He's connected on this Android device. And again, he is authenticating, not specifically against Azure like we saw the other user, but this user is actually authenticating against Okta. And again, just more authentication requests. Here's a Cisco IP phone that's authenticating. You can see here in this particular case, it is authenticating via MAC-based authentication. So we whitelisted this device to allow it onto the network. So that's the alerts page. Again, you can filter very easily. You can see all the information about what's happening. If I want to take a look maybe at a MAC bypass denied alert, let's see if I have any here. So this is a device that got plugged into this a port or try to connect via SSID in this particular case. If you recognize a specific MAC address and I said, you know what, this is actually a good device, it should be allowed onto the network, I can quickly click on this link and either add this into an existing MAB account or create a new MAB account so that device, when it re-authenticates the next time, it would be allowed onto the network. So now let's take a look at our Devices tab. So our devices tab is any device that has authenticated. And you can see here some of those devices that we saw previously. So there's this device here that we saw in the alerts. Again, you can see the group that it got put into, what risk policy it got assigned to. You'll be able to see again the last time it connected, the last time the agent reported in, because this is using an agent. And you can see all this information here, the location, motherboard serial numbers. Is actually a virtual machine. The last time it connected, how it authenticated to my network, again, the IP address of that device, and of course, what SSID it connected to. So I can see all that information here very quickly. Also, because this is the agent is able to collect information from that device. And I can see that from within here by clicking on what looks like that little notepad. But I can see the security products that are installed, the applications that are installed, any networks or hot fixes are installed. Again, these are all attributes that you can create a risk policy for, stating that, for instance, if maybe my firewall is not enabled or my antivirus is not up to date, I can block that device or put it into remediation VLAN until it's ready to be allowed onto the network, or until we correct those issues. So services, so other things that you can see here that the agent is collecting on that device once you install it. And with the agent, even if the user takes that laptop home, the agent will still report back in and let you know that status of that device. So if anything changes, it will report back in automatically. Other devices that you see here, so these is other Mac-based authentication devices. So I create an account called MacSpoof. And so all the devices that authenticate against this account land here. And you can see here that I created this account. And you can see these are all the Mac addresses that I'm allowing. So I'm just adding these in individually because I have such a small network. But on bigger networks, obviously, you can just search for a Mac vendor. And that way, we'll just basically grab the first 6 octets of the OID. And if we see that, then we can allow it onto the network. And of course, once that device authenticates, I'll go ahead and put it into this group called IoT devices. You'll also see here that I've enabled IoT device trust. So IoT device trust is if you're using our local radius service, so that's a container or virtual machine, we can actually send a COA request back to that to the NAS to disconnect that user automatically. In this particular case, the IoT device trust, what it can do is it can alert you for any type of Mac spoofing. And then here we can send you an alert, or again, with the local radius, we can send a request, a COA request, to block that device from accessing the network. Another feature that we recently put in was IPSK. So you can actually enable IPSK. So you would set up a password for that SSID. So you would connect with that that password to that SSID. And of course, we'll be checking to make sure also that the device is whitelisted on our side to make sure that device is able to connect to the network. Other devices that you see here, here's a MacBook that's connected. You can see here the MacBook is actually being managed by Jamf. So there's certificate-based authentication, which is what we're showing you here. And you can see that from within here with the last network authentication type is supplicant certificate ETLS. So whether the agent is deploying that certificate or you're deploying that through SCEP services, which we can provide for you. In this particular case, Jamf is pushing out a SCEP certificate to my MacBook Air. And so that's why it's saying it's being managed by Jamf. You can also see there that there is a risk policy on there. So what we can do is we can go back out and ask Jamf if there's any issues on that device, much like we do with the agent. And then if there is an issue, we can definitely block it. In this particular case, I do have 2 factors that are contributing to my score to make it a 70. But it being yellow means is I just put it in as an alert. So the administrator would get an alert. Or you can send this to your SIEM solution. So you can analyze it from within there. And the same thing goes for Intune. So you can definitely do that here as well. So you can see here, this one is not managed by Intune, but we have all that nice information. Here's an iPhone that's connected. The iPhone is also being managed by Jamf. Again, this one has a score of 80, and you can see why, because this iPhone has TikTok installed. And this Android device, has unknown sources installed, which is why it's giving me that risk score of 70. So you can see installation from unknown sources. There are other icons that you see here. This other icon would be this one here, right? And this one here. So these two icons mean these are administrators, and these administrators were able to authenticate to a network device or router, switch, firewall using TACX Plus. And you can see that from within here. This is network device administration, the date, time that it connected, and what IP address of that NAS device that the administrator connected to. So this is TACX Plus. Is included. You'll get one with our basic license and two with our next level up license. So you can basically take advantage for that. And again, that is something that you would have to deploy a container or virtual machine for. But again, it is something that we can provide for you. Other things that you see here, again, you're very easy to create filters on this device page. This is where I can create other Mac-based accounts. You can create contractor accounts from within here. This is a very nice feature. So you could put in the contractor's email, right, or use an alias. You can specify when that password is going to expire, and then you can put that contractor into a specific group. And so you can see here I created a group called contractors, and I can put that in there, and I can say the credentials or his the ability to authenticate will only be good for, let's say, 24 hours while that contractor is on site. And then you can create a device type account. So this gives you the ability to sort of filter in a little bit more. So you can see here some of the things. So an IoT device, I can add another rule. Maybe I want to say vendor. And then you can see here, we can see all these different vendors. So I'm able to go in here, create some filters. And so that way when a device authenticates, this is, I can put it into this account here. And what that does is really give me the flexibility to say, yeah, I have all of these maybe Apple devices, but I only want, specific, maybe I just want iPhones, or maybe I just want Apple TVs to authenticate in that device type account. That's where I can do that from within there. You also have the ability to block devices. I can come in here and block this device if I want to. Again, because I have the local radius container running on a container, then it would automatically send a COA request to my switch to go ahead and knock this phone off my network. So you can definitely block it. You can deactivate it. You can also export all this information out. So a lot of nice functionality there. The other piece here is that you have a network tab. So this network tab is really looking at it from the NAS perspective. So what is connected to a specific access point or a switch, all of that would be seen here. You have the ability to rename some of these. You can automatically save specific sites. For instance, maybe if I have a specific network IP range that belongs to the Boston location and one for the Austin location, I could say, if you see a switch or an AP connecting from this IP range, put it in the Boston location, or maybe the IP range matches the Austin location, so it get put into the Austin location from within here. The other piece that we have here is our dashboard. So dashboard, quick overview of what we see on your network, right? So you can see the overview that I have. So you can see agent, how many devices are agent-based or agentless, how many are wired or wireless, right? How many are connected via LDAP or Clear. Clear is basically our authentication repository. How many are Mac-based and how many are a device type, which I was showing you earlier. You can also see here some of the agents that are connecting. And you can see here, there is that Android device, and it's telling me where it's connecting from, and that location is correct where it is connecting from. Other things to show here, so the groups. We talked a little bit about groups and where those devices ended up. So I have the first two groups that I have here are TACX groups. And the reason I have TACX groups at the very top here of the list is because we basically look at groups from the top down. So if user A is in this specific group, we will stop here at this group and not go any further. But if we don't find user A in any of these two, then we'll keep looking until we find that user. Let's say it's into users. And once we find them, he would get put into that group. In this particular case, what you can do per group is you can specify what SSIDs they can be connected to, whether or not they can connect to wired or even VPN access, as well as TACX Plus. You can also do multi-factor authentication for this group using the agent. So the agent will allow you to, it would basically send a push to, let's say, your phone, so that you can do MFA for TACX Plus. And again, these are the SSIDs that if you're a user that's part of this group that you can connect to. In this particular case, I have an SSID called Port Aruba, and I'm letting them connect. The only way you can connect to this SSID is with a certificate. And that's what I'm doing here. You can also see how the agent can be provisioned. So when the agent installs, think of the agent basically as a lightweight MDM, and it can actually provision out a computer certificate, user computer authentication method on the interface itself, and also make sure that the interface is configured for ETLS, plus obviously put in the correct certificates that the user needs to authenticate. On the left-hand side, I've basically designated who are the users. Now, because this is Intune users and I'm using Azure AD, I basically selected a group called Portnox Intune users. These users are inside my Azure AD. This is my Okta group. I could just come in here, and again, I would just select anybody that's being pulled in from Okta. So this is where you select those members, and then there's policies. So we talked about access control policies. These are risk assessment policies, remediation policies. This does require the agent. Any TACX Plus policies. So these are all different policies that can be assigned to this specific group right here. So let's take a look at some of those policies. So back under policies, you can see here I have my access control, risk assessment, my remediation, and my TACX policies. So under these policies, you see a whole bunch of different ones. I have one here called a ZTAP. And what you can see here is I have successful authentication violation. So if it's an authentication violation, meaning like you're not MAC address whitelisted, you don't have the correct certificate, your account's been disabled, whatever that might look like, instead of denying you access, I'm putting you into a specific VLAN ID. Again, there's a whole bunch of different types of groups. You can create as many groups as you want. I have a mobile policy. I have our contractors. And there's always a system default. So what about wired? Again, successful authentication, which would mean I'll drop you off in the default VLAN unless you specify exactly what VLAN to push those users to. There's a risk policy violation, which we'll talk about here in a second. And again, you can see here, deny access or assign it to a VLAN. You can also do access control lists or ACLs. So you can see here, I can do that by rule IDs. I can do a DACL builder. I can do custom DACLs, right? So you have a lot of flexibility on how to do that from within here, what to do when a user authenticates, and even segment them out on the network. That takes us to risk policies. So you can see here again, other different types of policies. So let's take a look at one of these policies. We'll take a look at the system default. So we have two options here. We have an option to do it with the agent or agentless. We'll go through agentless first because it's easier. So you can see here Intune and Jamf. And these are the two that we can select from. And you can see the attributes that we can that are presented to us. So either it's managed by Intune, it's Intune dormant, or it's Intune non-compliant. Then I can just basically say, okay, here's my risk score. If it's not Intune compliant, let's make that a 90. And if I take a look at that, anything from 90 to 100 would constitute a block action. But if, again, I have an access control policy that might say push that device to a specific VLAN. For Jamf, you can see here I can basically specify some of those attributes that we're collecting from the device. So you can see here firewalls at 80, right? Certificates could be at 30. Maybe you need to have a specific Jamf certificate installed. You can see not managed by Jamf. So all these are attributes that you could do. If it's the agent that's on there that's collecting information, then the agent, you can take a look at all these different attributes that you can basically run a risk assessment on those devices. Open ports, not managed by Intune. Do you have administrator privileges? Is the firewall installed, up and running? Certificates, maybe missing patches. So a lot of good information that you can get that we collect from those devices. Same thing for Mac OS, for Linux, Android, and iOS. So all these specific attributes that you can use. Then we have remediation. So again, this would be the agent only. So you can see here again some of the things that the agent can do: do the antivirus live update, firewall start, some services you can stop for Mac OS, disconnect USB devices. So you can see here some of those from that we have available. And then of course we have TACX. So TACX, when you assign a policy to a TACX group, you can basically define privilege levels, specific allowed services, maybe custom attributes. You can also do this by command base, forbidden and allowed commands, right? So I can just say here, what are the forbidden commands, or I can deny all the commands and just allow specific ones. So again, a lot of flexibility on what we're doing here. Another thing here is troubleshooting. So the troubleshooting page, anything that's happening on the tenants or administrators logging in, making any changes anywhere, we'll be able to record that. Again, you're able to send that to your SIEM solution. And then we have that AAA log data. So that's that raw data that's being exchanged between us and the NAS device. You saw some of that in the session details. I don't have any AAA logs currently, but if there was, it would show here. Of course, you can export that out very easily from within here. And then we have a help page, great documentation that we have. Our technical writer is amazing. He's done some great documentation step-by-step on how to do integrations with Azure and Jamf and distribute that certificate, so it's all there. To download the agent, you can just go here, click on here, and you can go download the agent. And of course, from here, you can reach our support staff, which are exceptional as well. So that's the demonstration. This is Portnox Network Access Control. If you have any questions, I'll put a link at the bottom where you can reach us, as well as where you can start your own trial of Portnox Network Access Control. Thank you.